Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel, Stu Clark. Today we're going to do a follow-up video to last week's video. We're looking at long lens close-up photography using focus stacking or focus shift with the Nikon Z8 camera. And in today's video, we're going to do a walkthrough of how to test your lens to determine what your minimum focus shift will be in order to make sure that all of your photo is going to be in focus. Depending what lens you use, the minimum focus distance, the lens length, will greatly affect the depth of field and therefore how much you need to adjust the focus shift between shots and how many shots you need in order to get all of your subject in focus. Okay, so let's head out to the yard and we'll do some testing. We'll walk you through how I went about testing this so that you can easily test your lenses and figure this out for yourself. The setup we're going to use here is very simple. We've got a ruler. We've got it propped up on a bit of an angle, and we just got on some moss just for effect to get an idea of what we're looking at. Okay, so we've got the camera set up at minimum focus distance. So with these cameras, they will autofocus to a certain distance, but often you can manually focus in a little bit closer. You really want to be at the autofocus minimum for this as opposed to the manual focus, just to make sure the camera is autofocusing properly beyond that. So you want to set up and have your camera at the minimum focus distance to the front of the ruler. So we're basically going to be focusing on the very front edge of the ruler. Okay, so you can see where my focus point is right at the bottom of the ruler down there. So I'm focused at that minimum focus distance. Now we're going to go to menu. We're going to go down, we're in the photo shooting menu here. It's right at the very bottom. Probably could have gone the other way, but we're scrolling down to show you. So it's focus shift shooting is what Nikon calls it, effectively focus stacking. Now you can see here we've got number of shots, we've got focus depth, width, interval until next shot, first frame exposure lock. All these are really important. Obviously number of shots is relevant. You can change this up to 300, which is, you would have an incredible amount of adjustability in focus for your image for that one. Focus step width, you can go from narrow to wide, and that's basically how much it's going to focus between the shots. This is one of the settings where you really want to pick the sharpest aperture for your lens. With this lens 6.3, I'm really happy with. You could probably go to f7.1, even f8 if you needed to, depending on the light, depending on your subject. Obviously, you need a static subject, so you can't shoot this at slow shutter speeds. Like I said, locked off on a tripod for sure. So what we're going to do, we want to test it at a few different variables so that we get an idea of not only the steps. So we're trying to figure out how many steps, like how much of a adjustment 1 versus 10 is with each step of focusing. And that's what we're trying to figure out here. And then that will allow you to then figure out how many shots you need to take. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to number of shots. We're going to change that to 10. That way it kind of gives us a nice, when we look at the computer, we can kind of see how many millimeters it moves with 10 shots. And that's kind of a great way to then determine, do we need 50 shots, do we need 100 shots, based on how large the subject is, how much of it you're trying to get in focus. So I'm going to set it at 10. So the first round we're going to do at focus step width of 1. So you've got number of shots 10, focus step width 1. Interval the next shot, we're going to have it 0. We want these shots kind of rung off one after the other because for this style of shooting, at least the way I want to do it. And then we're all going to have the first frame exposure lock. That way the exposure is not changing between frames. You want to have them locked off from that first shot. Okay, and then you go to the top, hit start, and you basically hit the OK button, and that will then take 10 shots. Okay, so now, very important, taking those first 10 shots. Now what I want to do, I want to take a shot with my hand in front of the lens. That way I've got some dark frames in there so I know that I've started the next test. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into the focus shift shooting menu. We're going to change this to 5. So now we've got number of shots 10 and 5. So we're going to hit go to start. Before we do this though, what's happened is we've now moved beyond, we've kind of, you have one of the options at the back of this is to focus position auto reset. That works with Z lenses. It doesn't work with the F-mount lens, so that's why it's grayed out on mine. So basically what I have to do every time I've done a series of shots, I have to then reset the focus to the front of the subject again. So we're going to click on this back again. Now we're focused right at the very front of the ruler again. We're going to go back to focus step width, number shots 10, and we're going to click start. Okay. Now we're going to do this again with we're going to again hand in front so we know that we have taking a new series of shots. Trust me, when you've got, if you've done a bunch of focus shift shots at different settings, you're going to wonder when you open up in Lightroom, you've got hundreds of photos, trying to figure out which is the first photo in the series is always a nightmare. So having that done is very important. You'll really appreciate that tip. Okay. And now we're going to go to focus step and we're going to change it to 10. We're going to hit OK, and we're going to go to start. So now this will tell us how much variation we're getting between the minimum adjustment focus point from 1 to 10. So we've got 1, 5, and 10. So it gives us kind of the minimum to the middle and the widest. And then we'll also then be able to look at when you're shooting with those parameters, how far will 10 shots get us? So then we can extrapolate out 20 shots, 30 shots, 50 shots, depending on how wide the subject is you're trying to focus on. So that will then allow you to know, if you're just shooting a snail, you only need 20 shots. You're shooting a snake and you want to get as much as a snake and focus as possible, you might need 100 shots. So what we're basically looking at we shot this at 7.1, and we're just trying to make sure that we are getting as much depth of field. We're keeping within the sharpest part of that depth of field for all of the shots in the series. Okay, so we're back at the computer, and we're going to take a look at the shots we just took and go through, and so that you can have a really clear idea of how to analyze the photos you took in order to figure out what settings you need in camera. First off, what you have to recognize is that the first shot in the focus shift series, so basically what we've done is in the yard, we took 10 shots at a focus shift of 1, 10 shots at a focus shift of 5, and 10 shots at a focus shift of 10. By doing these 3 settings, it gives us kind of a real base idea of where we want to set our camera based on the lens we're using. And this will, depending on how long your lens is, how close the minimum focus is, will then play into how large the depth of field is for your lens, and that's kind of the determining factor of how much you want to focus shift. You want to make it so the focus shift is within the sharp section of the depth of field. You don't want to be doing a focus shift beyond the depth of field. So the first shot in the series is essentially just the depth of field. So we focused on the front edge of the ruler here, and with my lens, we're shooting at 7.1 at 2.2 meters. My lens has a depth of field of 6.4 millimeters. So 6.4 millimeters, because of course, the ruler being an imperial ruler, the metric starts a little bit up. But basically we're looking at, you can see this, it's sharp to about this point right here on the ruler. And so basically up to about 4 millimeters is, at 4 millimeters, it seems to be where it starts to fade into the depth of field. So we go to the next shot. You can see that it's sharp just beyond 5 millimeters. It's just sharp, not quite to 6 millimeters, but beyond. So basically, what's happening with the focus shift, it's shifting the whole depth of field. So everything is shifting up. So basically, it's shifted about 1 to 1.5 millimeters with the focus shift of 1. So then we jump to the last shot here. This shot here is the 10 shots. This is the focus stack. We've taken into Photoshop. We've done the focus stack. So with this one here, you can see it goes from the front edge and it's sharp just almost to 2 centimeters, almost to 20 millimeters. So if you take into account about 3.5 millimeters the front here, it's the whole focus shift. So if don't forget, it's gone from this section here to here. So basically, so the focus shift is about 15 to 16 millimeters with a focus shift of 10 shots. So that's basically, that's how much the camera has adjusted the focusing. So because that first portion is just the depth of field, you're not really going to add that into how much is shifting. So that's something to keep in mind, that because you're going to do 20 shots, this first portion is not going to be added into how many shots you're going to get beyond there. So basically that looks, I said 10 shots is about 20 millimeters. Now we go to the next step up, we're looking at, so this is where we've gone 10 shots with a focus shift of 5. Again, the first shot is just the depth of field. We're at about 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters is where it's sharp to. You can see it jumps up to about 8 millimeters. So it's jumped from, it's kind of done a significant jump up compared to the 1. Now we're up to about 1.1 millimeters, 1.4 millimeters. So you can see the focus shift of 5 is definitely a larger jump for sure. So now if we take a look at the 10 shot series here. So this is the 10 shots, focused with the 5 would have been focus stacked. You can see we've gone from the 0 point here, and we're up to about 3.6 centimeters or 36 millimeters. So that focus shift has shifted almost 3.2 centimeters or 30 millimeters to 32 millimeters has been the focus shift. So those 10 shots have shifted about, let's call it 3 centimeters, just to keep it nice and simple. Now the final series, we've gone to 10. So with 10 shots, so again, the first shot we're looking at about 0.4. The second shot, you can see it's a big jump. And what's happening here is the width of 10 is actually wider than our depth of field. So what that means is if we go to the final shot in the series here, where this is the stacked image, this is the 10 shots at a focus width of 10 that have all been stacked in Photoshop. But this is really important. What's happened here, as you can see, you've got soft bands, because what's happened is the focus shift has jumped beyond the sharp portion of the depth of field, and you end up where you've got soft portions showing in your focus stack. And this is the whole point of doing this test. You want to make sure that the idea behind focus stacking is you want every portion of the photograph sharp. And this will help them ensure that you don't create this banding, this soft banding, because this is obviously not ideal. Where you can see at about every centimeter point, you're getting the soft banding portion. So basically, when we look at the 5 shot, it's, for the most part, it's in focus, but this is also shot at 7.1, because I can sometimes shoot at 5.6. What I'm going to do for my preferred focus stack settings with my lens at minimum focus is going to be 4. And that way I'm probably taking a few extra shots for every focus stack, but I'm ensuring that I'm getting the sharpest portion of my depth of field in every shot. So when I do the focus stack in Photoshop or Helicon, whatever software you want to use, you are ensuring that the entire stacked image will be in focus. So now what I've done here is I've done a 50 shot at a focus width of 4. So this is kind of utilizing my focus width of 4, which is going to be my preferred setting with my Nikon 200 to 500 on my Z8. Now when you take a look at this as 50 shots, you can see how there's no gaps. everything is nice and sharp throughout the entire focus stack. And those 50 shots are now almost 12 centimeters, 120 millimeters is in focus. What's happening here is as you move from your minimum focus distance, as you move into the focus stack, your depth of field will be increasing. So as much as that focus shift is probably going to be a fixed amount, your depth of field will be increasing with each focus shift. So as you get further away from the minimum focus distance, that focus, your depth of field will increase. So you're going to end up with a little deeper kind of depth of field at the far end compared to the close end. So that's why we're up to 120 millimeters in focus with a 50 shot focus stack at 4. Where if you did the math on it, you think it would be less than that. So you, like I said, you will be, that focus stack does stretch out on the longer end. So something to keep in mind. And then if you compare that to the 100 shots, you can see now that it goes, the entire image beyond the minimum focus is now is now sharp. And it's and something to also keep in mind is not only when we're dealing with a flat subject here, but you also have some depth behind it. So when you're looking at the focus stack, you can see how it's sharp on the front of the ruler as we're going to depth of field lengthwise, but behind the ruler is actually a bit soft. So depending on what part of your subject you're trying to get in focus, you might need a little extra focus stack. Because when you're comparing that to this portion of the 100 shots, you can see how it's nice and sharp behind the ruler too. So depending on what it is you're trying to do, how much of your subject you're trying to capture, is something to really keep in mind when you're trying to decide on how many images you want to stack. But I think it's really good. Like I said, for me, it's 4. If you're shooting with a 100 to 400, you might find it's 6 or 7 because the shorter lens will have a longer depth of field, even if you are a little bit closer. But like I said, it's great to know that kind of give yourself a fixed parameter on the minimum focus shift you want to set for shooting at your minimum focus distance. Knowing anything beyond that, you're just going to get a few extra photos in the focus stack, which is fine. But you're eliminating the 50 extra shots. So to give you an idea, another thing you want to look for, went and shot a great little a grouping of mushrooms yesterday, and it's another great test. So on this one here, I started the focus stack a little bit ahead of the subject, probably a little bit too much ahead of the subject. So when you're trying to determine how many photos you need, obviously you're gonna kind of guess the first shot series. But once you've taken that first set of photos, you can then take a look at the photos and determine how many more you need to add. So with this one here, I shot a little bit forward of the subject. So you want to look at the first shot in your series to make sure that you're in front of your subject, which we are here. But then what you want to look at too is you want to take a look at the last subject, the last shot in the series. So in the last shot in the series, when you zoom in here, what's happened, I missed the last mushroom. I didn't have enough photos in the stack. So this was shot with 50 shots. So I probably wanted to add another 10 shots in order to get that last mushroom in focus for the stack. So I'd kind of go into the settings, change the focus shift to 60 and reshoot it, and I'd get that last mushroom in focus for the stack. And when you look at, so the series before this one, again, I can't stress this enough, is putting your hand in front of the lens between stacks really makes your life a lot easier. Otherwise, I've got to go through and look at every photo, trying to figure out where the focus stack starts and stops between them. So the series before that with the focus stack, I focused on the first mushroom. I didn't focus on the log in front. I focused a little closer to the mushroom. Because of that, with those same 50 shots, this last mushroom is now in focus. So that's something to, when you're looking at, depending on where your start or stop, it's just getting to know not only where to set up, to kind of give you the base for starting your focus stack, but looking in the field at your shots to make sure that you've got the focus stack you expect. I said, so the last shot's really important to make sure that you've got a sharp photo in the last image of the stack is sharp for the back of your subject, just so you know you've got your entire subject in sharp focus. Now this is the actual stack of this image. Whoops. So this is the stack of this photo. So you can see how I'm focused right through the mushrooms all the way to the back one here. What I really like with this style of photography, because you're utilizing a long lens and with the focus stack, it gives a neat perspective, because it's still going to give you depth of field beyond, in front of and beyond the focus stack, which is really nice. It still gives you subject isolation, and I think it's going to work better than if you're using a wider lens and stopping it down. You're not going to get that same fall off with the depth of field. And I think this is a great way, was said for those, for close-up photography, giving you really nice fall off depth of field on your subject on either end, but still gives you some nice subject isolation. The one thing up top here, you notice there's a bit of a green blur. This blade of grass is blowing in the wind. And this gives a great example of just how important it is to look at your entire photo and make sure there's nothing moving within it when you're planning on doing a focus stack. Ideally, I should have just pulled that one piece of grass out of the shot, and we wouldn't have that blur happening in the stack itself. So yeah, that said, it's a really fun way of getting close-up photography with these amazing long lenses today. And yeah, I hope you got some great information out of this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for joining me today. Till next time, we'll see you out there. Take care.